Welcome to I'm Tonight. We step into the elegant yet sinister world of 1920s London, where the brilliant Hercule Poirot unravels a chilling locked-room mystery at the Silverleaf Hotel. Settle in, dear listeners, for a tale of deception, deduction, and danger. Tell me in the comments where you're listening from. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Arrival at the Silverleaf, 2,000 words. The Silverleaf Hotel stood as a beacon of grandeur on a quiet corner of Mayfair, its marble facade catching the amber glow of gaslights on a crisp autumn evening in 1925. To the casual observer, it was a palace of luxury, its arched windows and gilded cornices whispering of wealth and refinement. To Hercule Poirot, the diminutive Belgian detective with his immaculate mustache and penchant for symmetry, it was a stage where human passions meticulously concealed were about to play out in a drama of the darkest kind. His polished patent leather shoes clicked rhythmically on the cobblestones as he approached, his green eyes scanning the scene with the precision of a watchmaker. Poirot had been summoned by an old friend, Sir Reginald Hawthorne, the hotel's owner, whose letter had arrived at Poirot's London flat 2 days prior. The note was brief, written in Sir Reginald's florid hand. "My dear Poirot, your presence at the Silverleaf would be most welcome. A matter requires your discretion. Join us for dinner Saturday, 8 p.m. The ellipsis intrigued Poirot. Sir Reginald, a man of hearty laughs and hearty appetites, was not one for ambiguity. Something, Poirot's little gray cells whispered, was amiss. The lobby of the Silverleaf was a symphony of opulence. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across the parquet floor, inlaid with ebony and rosewood in geometric patterns that pleased Poirot's love of order. Velvet drapes in deep burgundy-framed tall windows, and a grand staircase spiraled upward, its banister gleaming with polished brass. The air carried the faint scent of beeswax polish and expensive cigars, mingling with the chatter of guests. Diplomats in tailcoats, aristocrats in furs, and the occasional nouveau riche flaunting their newfound wealth. Poirot adjusted his bow tie, his reflection in a gilded mirror confirming that every hair of his mustache was in place. Sir Reginald greeted him at the entrance to the lounge, his broad face flushed with what Poirot suspected was more than just the warmth of the fire crackling in the hearth. "Poirot, my dear fellow," he boomed, clapping a hand on the detective's shoulder. "You're a sight for sore eyes. Come, have a tisane or something stronger, eh?" His laugh was loud, but his eyes darted nervously, betraying a tension that Poirot noted with interest. Sir Reginald was a portly man in his 50s, his waistcoat straining slightly at the buttons, his graying hair slicked back with pomade. He wore his wealth like a second skin, yet tonight there was a crack in his usual joviality. As they settled into plush armchairs near a roaring fire, Poirot sipped his tisane, a blend of chamomile and mint, served in a porcelain cup that matched the hotel's elegance. His eyes, sharp as a falcon's, surveyed the room, cataloging the guests who would soon become players in this unfolding drama. There was Lady Eleanor Whitmore, a widow of formidable presence, her emerald necklace glinting like a predator's eyes. Her sharp tongue and sharper gaze suggested a woman who missed nothing, her black silk dress rustling as she gestured animatedly to a waiter. Across the room, Mr. Victor Langston, an American businessman with a brash laugh, toyed with a gold pocket watch, his pinstriped suit loud in both color and confidence. Miss Clara Duval, a French actress with porcelain skin and a secretive smile, sipped champagne, her auburn curls catching the light. Dr. Arthur Grayson, a physician with a reserved air, clutched a medical journal, his spectacles reflecting the firelight. Major Henry Blake, a retired officer with a pronounced limp, stood stiffly by the bar, his medals gleaming on his chest. And Mrs. Beatrice Langley, Sir Reginald's sister-in-law, hovered near the piano, her nervous hands smoothing her lavender gown. Each guest, Poirot observed, carried an air of guarded mystery, their glances darting like moths around a flame. Lady Eleanor's barbed remark about the cost of the hotel's champagne drew a flush from Sir Reginald. Victor's loud boast about a recent business venture, a shipping deal, Poirot noted, elicited a tight smile from Clara. Dr. Grayson's quiet murmur about a new medical discovery went unnoticed, save by Poirot's keen ears. Major Blake's gruff comment about the war stirred a flicker of unease in Mrs. Langley's eyes. The little gray cells, as Poirot called his remarkable intellect, began to hum. Mon Dieu, he thought, this is no ordinary gathering. Sir Reginald had arranged a private dinner in the hotel's rosewood-paneled dining room, its long table set with silver candelabras and bone china. The meal was a feast, consommé with truffle shavings, roasted pheasant with chestnut stuffing, and a raspberry soufflé that Poirot approved with a nod. The conversation sparkled like the crystal glasses, but beneath the civility, Poirot detected currents of tension. Lady Eleanor quizzed Sir Reginald about the hotel's finances, her tone implying knowledge of some shortfall. "Surely, Reginald, you're not struggling to keep this palace afloat," she said, her smile sharp as a blade. Victor, swirling his wine, boasted of a deal that would revolutionize the Atlantic trade, glancing at Sir Reginald as if expecting a reaction. Clara deflected questions about her recent absence from the London stage, her laugh a touch too bright. Dr. Grayson spoke little, but his fingers tightened on his fork when Sir Reginald mentioned health concerns. Major Blake, after a second glass of port, muttered about debts of honor from the war, his eyes fixed on Sir Reginald. Mrs. Langley, pale and fidgety, excused herself briefly, claiming a headache. As the dessert plates were cleared, Sir Reginald rose, tapping his glass with a spoon. The room fell silent, all eyes on him. "My friends," he began, his voice steady but his hands betraying a slight tremble. "The Silverleaf has been my pride, but times change. I have decided to sell the hotel, to embark on a new chapter." A gasp rippled through the room. Lady Eleanor's eyes narrowed, Victor's jaw tightened, and Clara's glass paused at her lips. Dr. Grayson's spectacles slipped slightly, and Major Blake's fist clenched. Mrs. Langley, returning just in time, let out a small cry, quickly stifled. Poirot's mustache twitched. The announcement, he sensed, was the spark that would ignite the powder keg. After dinner, the guests dispersed to the lounge or their suites, their farewells laced with strained politeness. Poirot lingered, declining Sir Reginald's offer of a nightcap. "Non, merci," he said. "I prefer to keep the mind clear." He retired to his suite on the 4th floor, a compact but elegant room with a view of Mayfair's twinkling lights. As he adjusted the perfectly aligned toiletries on his dresser, he reflected on the evening. The Silverleaf was a microcosm of human nature, ambition, envy, and secrets, all polished to a deceptive shine. Sir Reginald's announcement had stirred the pot, and Poirot's intuition told him the ingredients were volatile. At precisely 11:47 p.m., as Poirot was folding his silk pajamas with geometric precision, a scream shattered the silence. It came from the 5th floor where Sir Reginald's private suite was located. Poirot's heart quickened, not with fear but with the thrill of a puzzle unveiled. He slipped on his dressing gown, grabbed his cane, and stepped into the corridor, where the gaslights flickered like conspirators. The Silverleaf Hotel, so serene moments ago, was about to reveal its darkest secret. Chapter 2. The crime discovered, 2,000 words. The scream tore through the Silverleaf Hotel at precisely 11:47 p.m. A sharp, anguished cry that seemed to ripple through the polished corridors like a stone dropped in still water. Hercule Poirot, standing in his 4th-floor suite, paused mid-fold of his silk pajamas, his green eyes narrowing. The sound had come from above, from the 5th floor where Sir Reginald Hawthorne's private suite was located. His little gray cells, always alert, sparked with anticipation. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, "the drama begins." Slipping on his emerald green dressing gown and grasping his ebony cane, Poirot stepped into the corridor where the gaslights cast long shadows that danced like silent conspirators. The hotel, moments ago a haven of elegance, now hummed with unease. Doors creaked open along the corridor and curious guests peered out, their faces a mixture of alarm and curiosity. Poirot's measured steps echoed as he ascended the grand staircase, its brass banister cold under his gloved hand. He was joined by Mr. Perkins, the hotel manager, a wiry man with a pinched face and a perpetual air of apology. "Mr. Poirot, sir," Perkins stammered, his bow tie askew. "It came from Sir Reginald's suite. I fear something dreadful has happened." Behind him, a small crowd gathered. Lady Eleanor Whitmore, her emerald necklace glinting ominously. Mr. Victor Langston, his gold watch dangling from his waistcoat. Miss Clara Duval clutching a silk shawl. Dr. Arthur Grayson, his medical journal tucked under his arm. Major Henry Blake, his limp more pronounced in haste. And Mrs. Beatrice Langley, her lavender gown rumpled, her eyes wide with panic. They reached the 5th floor where the heavy oak door to Sir Reginald's suite loomed, its brass nameplate gleaming under the flickering gaslight. Perkins knocked sharply. "Sir Reginald, are you all right?" Silence answered, thick and foreboding. Poirot's mustache twitched. He tried the handle. Locked. The keyhole revealed a key still inserted on the inside, a detail that sent a shiver of intrigue through Poirot's orderly mind. "We must enter," he declared, his voice calm but firm. Perkins hesitated, then signaled to a porter who arrived with a skeleton key. It failed to turn the lock. "The key inside blocks it," Perkins muttered, his brow slick with sweat. With no time to waste, Major Blake, ever the man of action, shouldered the door with a grunt. The wood groaned, then splintered at the lock, giving way with a crack that echoed like a gunshot. The group poured into the suite, and a collective gasp filled the air. Sir Reginald Hawthorne lay sprawled on a lush Persian rug, his evening jacket stained crimson around a dagger plunged into his chest. His lifeless eyes stared at the ornate ceiling where a chandelier glittered mockingly above. The room was a study in opulence, rosewood paneling, a marble fireplace, and a wide window overlooking Mayfair's twinkling lights. But it was the locked door, the bolted window, and the absence of any other exit that seized Poirot's attention. A locked room mystery, the kind that delighted his meticulous intellect. Poirot knelt beside the body, his gloved fingers hovering over the scene with the precision of a surgeon. The dagger was ornate, its hilt encrusted with a single ruby that caught the light like a drop of blood. "This is not a common weapon," Poirot noted, his Belgian accent softening the words. "It is unique." No one recognized it, though Mrs. Langley's hand flew to her mouth and Clara's eyes flickered briefly. On the mahogany desk nearby sat a half-empty glass of brandy, its amber liquid glinting. Beside it, a crumpled letter bore the scrawled words, "You will pay for your betrayal." The handwriting was jagged, almost theatrical, and Poirot's brow furrowed. A faint scent lingered in the air, floral, elusive, like jasmine touched with something sharper. Perfume, perhaps, but whose? Inspector Japp of Scotland Yard arrived within the hour, his overcoat damp from the London mist. His ruddy face was grim as he surveyed the scene. "Blimey, Poirot, you've landed in it this time," he said, scratching his chin. "A locked room, a dagger, and a room full of toffs with secrets. Devil of a puzzle." Poirot's smile was slight but confident. "A puzzle, oui, but one the little gray cells will solve." Poirot examined the room with methodical care. The window, triple-bolted from the inside, showed no signs of tampering. Its frame was sealed tight, the bolts rusted with age. The fireplace, cold and spotless, offered no hidden passage. The walls, lined with bookshelves and portraits, were solid, though Poirot noted a faint seam behind a bookcase, a potential clue but dust-covered and untouched for years. The brandy glass intrigued him most. He sniffed it, detecting a bitter undertone beneath the liquor's aroma. "A sedative, perhaps," he murmured, signaling Jap to have it tested. The letter, written on hotel stationery, bore no fingerprints but Sir Reginald's own, a detail that deepened the mystery. The guests, now suspects, were ushered to the lounge downstairs, where the fire's warmth did little to dispel their unease. Poirot began his inquiries, his voice soft but commanding attention. Lady Eleanor, her posture rigid, insisted she had been in her suite, reading Thackeray by candlelight. "I heard the scream, nothing more," she said, her tone daring contradiction. Victor Langston, loosening his tie, claimed he was at the bar, though the bartender, a nervous young man, hesitated before confirming his presence. Clara Duval, her shawl slipping to reveal trembling shoulders, said she was rehearsing lines in her room, alone. Dr. Grayson, adjusting his spectacles, stated he had been in the library, studying a journal on toxicology, a detail Poirot filed away. Major Blake, leaning heavily on his cane, said he was in the billiards room, practicing shots to ease old war wounds. Mrs. Langley, her voice barely a whisper, claimed she was in her suite, nursing a headache with laudanum. Each alibi was plausible, yet none could be verified beyond doubt. Poirot's eyes gleamed as he paced the lounge, his cane tapping a steady rhythm. "The truth," he said, addressing the group, "is like a fine watch. It lies in the smallest gears, the tiniest movements. And I, Hercule Poirot, will find it." Jap snorted, but his respect for Poirot was evident. The suspects exchanged glances, some defiant, others fearful. Lady Eleanor's fingers tightened on her necklace, Victor's watch clicked shut, and Clara's smile faltered. Dr. Grayson's journal slipped slightly, revealing a dog-eared page. Major Blake's medals glinted as he shifted, and Mrs. Langley's hands twisted her handkerchief into knots. Poirot returned to the suite for a final sweep, his mind cataloging details. The ruby-hilted dagger suggested premeditation, yet its origin was a mystery. The letter's words, "You will pay for your betrayal," hinted at a personal vendetta, but the handwriting matched no one's. The perfume, faint but persistent, tugged at Poirot's memory. Had he smelled it earlier, perhaps at dinner? The sedative in the brandy, confirmed by Jap's preliminary test, indicated a calculated act. Yet the locked door and bolted window defied logic. "An impossible crime," Jap muttered, shaking his head. Poirot's mustache curved upward. "Impossible? Non, mon ami, merely improbable. The truth hides in the order of things." As the clock struck 1 a.m., the hotel seemed to hold its breath. The guests were confined to their rooms under Jap's orders, the porter stationed at the staircase. Poirot stood alone in the suite, the silence broken only by the distant chime of a church bell. He closed his eyes, letting his gray cells sift through the evening's events. Sir Reginald's nervous laugh, the suspect's guarded glances, the announcement of the hotel's sale. The scream, the locked door, the dagger's ruby gleam, all pieces of a puzzle that to Poirot was beginning to take shape. Chapter 3. The investigation begins, 2,000 words. The Silverleaf Hotel, its elegance now tinged with dread, hummed with the quiet tension of a stage before the curtain rises. It was past 1 a.m., and the grand lounge where Hercule Poirot had gathered the suspects glowed softly under the flicker of gaslights. The velvet drapes seemed to absorb the whispers of unease, and the fire in the hearth cast long shadows across the faces of the 6 guests, each a potential killer. Poirot stood before them, his diminutive frame commanding the room, his green eyes sharp as cut glass. His ebony cane tapped a slow, deliberate rhythm on the parquet floor, a metronome for his thoughts. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his Belgian accent precise yet soothing. "A crime has been committed, a life taken. But fear not. The truth, it cannot hide from Hercule Poirot." Inspector Japp, leaning against a rosewood pillar, chewed his pencil, his notepad already scrawled with hasty notes. "Right, Poirot," he said, his voice gruff but deferential. "You've got your work cut out. Locked room, no witnesses, and a room full of motives." Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile betraying his relish for the challenge. He turned to the suspects. Lady Eleanor Whitmore, her emerald necklace glinting like a warning. Mr. Victor Langston, his gold watch now stilled in his pocket. Miss Clara Duval, her silk shawl slipping to reveal nervous fingers. Dr. Arthur Grayson, clutching his medical journal like a shield. Major Henry Blake, his medals glinting with military pride. And Mrs. Beatrice Langley, her lavender gown crumpled, her eyes darting like a cornered doe. Poirot began his interviews, his questions as precise as a tailor's stitches. Lady Eleanor, seated ramrod straight, met his gaze with defiance. "I was in my suite reading," she insisted, her voice sharp as her cheekbones. "Thackeray's Vanity Fair, hardly the stuff of murder." Yet Poirot noted her fingers tightening on her necklace, a telltale sign of unease. She admitted to a financial dispute with Sir Reginald, who had refused to invest in her late husband's crumbling estate. "He called it a lost cause," she said, her lips thinning. "I called him a miser." Her motive, money, pride, was clear, but her composure suggested calculation. Poirot's gray cells filed this away. Mr. Victor Langston, slouching in his chair, exuded the brash confidence of a man used to winning. "I was at the bar, knocking back a whiskey," he said, his American drawl cutting through the room's tension. "Ask the bartender, Jimmy, was it?" The bartender, hovering nearby, nodded hesitantly, his eyes avoiding Victor's. Poirot's brow arched. Victor revealed a failed business deal with Sir Reginald, a shipping venture that collapsed, costing him thousands. "He pulled out last minute," Victor growled, his hand brushing his watch. "Left me high and dry. But murder? Nah, I'm no thug." His casual dismissal rang hollow, and Poirot noted the faint tremor in his fingers. Miss Clara Duval, the French actress, spoke in a voice soft as velvet, her auburn curls framing a face that could charm a jury. "I was in my room rehearsing lines," she said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Sir Reginald, he was my patron, you know. He believed in my talent." But she faltered when Poirot pressed further, admitting Sir Reginald had recently withdrawn his support, citing her unreliable behavior. "He threatened to ruin me," she whispered, her shawl slipping further. Her motive, career desperation, was potent, and Poirot caught the fleeting glance she cast at Victor as if they shared a secret. Dr. Arthur Grayson, reserved and precise, adjusted his spectacles before answering. "I was in the library studying a journal on toxicology," he said, holding up the dog-eared volume. His voice was steady, but his knuckles whitened on the binding. He admitted to a professional disagreement with Sir Reginald, who had ignored his advice on a heart condition. "He was reckless with his health," Grayson said, his tone clipped. "I warned him, but he laughed it off." Poirot's eyes lingered on the journal, wondering if toxicology was more than an academic interest. Grayson's motive, professional pride, perhaps resentment, merited scrutiny. Major Henry Blake, his limp pronounced as he stood, spoke with the gruffness of a man hardened by war. "Billiards room, practicing shots," he said, his medals clinking softly. "Old wounds ache in this damp weather." He hinted at a wartime grudge against Sir Reginald, who had profited from military contracts while Blake's regiment suffered. "He made a fortune while we bled," Blake said, his jaw tight. His motive, bitter betrayal, was raw, and Poirot noted the way his hand gripped his cane as if it were a weapon. Mrs. Beatrice Langley, Sir Reginald's sister-in-law, seemed on the verge of collapse, her lavender gown pooling around her like a wilted flower. "I was in my suite, taking laudanum for a headache," she said, her voice barely audible. She admitted Sir Reginald planned to cut her from his will, citing her extravagance. "He said I was a burden," she whispered, twisting her handkerchief. Her motive, financial ruin, was desperate, and Poirot observed her trembling hands, wondering if fear masked guilt. With the interviews concluded, Poirot returned to Sir Reginald's suite, Jap trailing behind. The room, now cordoned off, was a frozen tableau of tragedy. The ruby-hilted dagger, still embedded in Sir Reginald's chest, gleamed under the chandelier's light. The brandy glass, its contents now in a police vial, had tested positive for a sedative. Chloral hydrate, Jap confirmed. "Enough to knock him out, not kill him," Jap said. "The dagger did the rest." Poirot nodded, his mind tracing the sequence. A drugged victim, a locked door, a single fatal blow. But how had the killer entered and exited? He examined the room anew. The triple-bolted window, rusted and secure, offered no entry. The fireplace, its marble pristine, hid no secret passages. The bookcase with its faint seam intrigued him, but a closer inspection revealed decades of dust undisturbed. "No one has passed through here in years," Poirot murmured. The crumpled letter, "You will pay for your betrayal," lay on the desk, its handwriting analyzed by Jap's team. "No match to any guests," Jap said, frustrated. "Could be a forgery." Poirot's eyes narrowed. The perfume, that elusive floral note, lingered faintly, tugging at his memory. Had he smelled it at dinner, perhaps on Clara's shawl or Beatrice's gown? Poirot's cane tapped as he paced, his gray cells weaving a tapestry of possibilities. The sedative suggested premeditation, but the locked door baffled him. He tested the door's lock, noting the key's position inside. "The killer wished us to believe no one could enter," he said to Jap. "Yet enter they did." Jap scratched his head. "You're saying it's not impossible?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Non, mon ami. It is a matter of method and motive." Back in the lounge, the suspects sat in uneasy silence, their alibis hanging like fragile threads. Poirot addressed them, his voice slow and deliberate, designed to unsettle. "Each of you had reason to wish Sir Reginald harm," he said. "Money, pride, betrayal. These are the threads of murder, but one of you has woven them into a noose." Lady Eleanor's eyes flashed, Victor snorted, and Clara's lips parted in a silent gasp. Grayson's journal slipped slightly, Blake's medals clinked, and Beatrice's handkerchief tore under her fingers. Poirot's gaze swept over them, cataloging every reaction. As the clock neared 2 a.m., Jap stationed constables at the hotel's exits, ensuring no one left. Poirot, standing by the lounge's window, gazed at Mayfair's misty streets, his mind a whirl of clues: the sedative, the letter, the perfume, the locked door. "The truth," he murmured, "is like a melody. It requires harmony, not discord." The Silverleaf Hotel, its grandeur now a mask for deceit, held its secrets tightly. But Poirot's little gray cells were already tuning the notes. Chapter 4. Clues and Red Herrings, 2,000 words. The Silverleaf Hotel, its elegance now shrouded in suspicion, seemed to hold its breath as the clock neared 3 a.m. Hercule Poirot stood in the grand lounge, the gaslights casting a soft glow on his immaculate mustache, his ebony cane resting lightly against a rosewood table. The suspects, confined to the lounge under Inspector Jap's watchful eye, sat in uneasy silence, their faces a gallery of guarded expressions. Lady Eleanor Whitmore's emerald necklace glinted with cold defiance, Mr. Victor Langston's gold watch lay idle in his palm. Miss Clara Duval's silk shawl slipped to reveal a nervous tick. Dr. Arthur Grayson clutched his medical journal. Major Henry Blake's medals gleamed with stoic pride, and Mrs. Beatrice Langley's lavender gown seemed to wilt with her composure. Poirot's green eyes swept over them, his little gray cells humming like a finely tuned engine. "The truth," he murmured, his voice a soothing cadence in the tense air, "is hidden in the details, and I, Hercule Poirot, shall find it." Jap, pacing near the fireplace, grumbled, "This locked room business is a nightmare, Poirot. No footprints, no forced entry, just that blasted dagger and a dead man." Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile betraying his relish for the impossible. "Patience, mon ami," he said. "The clues, they speak if one listens." He had already catalogued the initial evidence: the ruby-hilted dagger, the sedative-laced brandy, the cryptic letter, "You will pay for your betrayal," and the elusive floral perfume. Now he turned his attention to the hotel itself, its opulent corridors and hidden corners, seeking the threads that would unravel the mystery. Poirot began with a thorough search, accompanied by Jap and a nervous porter named Tommy. In the fifth-floor corridor outside Sir Reginald's suite, Tommy reported seeing Miss Clara Duval lingering near the door at 11:30 p.m., her shawl trailing like a ghost. "She looked furtive, sir," Tommy whispered, glancing at Clara in the lounge. Clara, overhearing, flushed and insisted she was merely passing by, returning to her room after a late rehearsal. Poirot's eyes narrowed, noting the contradiction with her earlier alibi of staying in her suite. A clue, perhaps, or a deliberate misdirection. In the suite itself, Poirot's meticulous inspection revealed a new detail: a single amaryllis petal, vibrant red, tucked beneath the edge of the Persian rug. "Curieux," he murmured, holding it to the light. The petal was fresh, its edges uncurled, suggesting it had fallen recently. Amaryllis was rare in London hotels, more suited to a private greenhouse. Poirot's mind flashed to Mrs. Beatrice Langley, who during dinner had mentioned her passion for exotic flowers. He pocketed the petal, its significance unclear but promising. Jap, unimpressed, muttered, "A flower? That's your clue?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "A clue, mon ami, is never alone. It is part of a pattern." The search continued downstairs in the hotel's service areas. In a narrow hallway near the kitchen, Poirot found a discarded cigarette butt, its brand, Chesterfield, matching the pack Victor Langston carried. Victor, when confronted, swore he hadn't smoked that evening, claiming he'd been at the bar. "Someone's trying to frame me," he growled, his American accent sharp with indignation. The bartender, Jimmy, wavered, admitting Victor had left the bar briefly around 11:20 p.m. Poirot's gray cells stirred. A red herring, perhaps, but one planted with intent. In the library, where Dr. Grayson claimed to have been, Poirot discovered a torn piece of medical gauze, its edges frayed, tucked behind a bookshelf. Grayson, when shown the gauze, paled slightly. "I carry such supplies, but I didn't leave this," he said, his voice steady but his spectacles slipping. Poirot noted the journal in Grayson's hand, its dog-eared page on sedatives. Chloral hydrate, the same found in Sir Reginald's brandy. A coincidence, or something more? Grayson's professional disagreement with Sir Reginald took on a darker hue. Major Blake's alibi led Poirot to the billiards room, where a war medal engraved with Blake's initials lay under a table. Blake's face hardened when shown the medal. "It was stolen from my room last week," he said, his voice gruff. "Someone's playing games." His wartime grudge against Sir Reginald, profiteering while soldiers died, burned in his eyes, but the medal's placement felt too convenient. Poirot's cane tapped thoughtfully. a distraction perhaps to divert suspicion. Mrs. Beatrice Langley's handkerchief, monogrammed BL, was found near the suite's fireplace, its lavender silk singed at one corner. Beatrice, trembling, claimed she'd misplaced it days ago. "I don't know how it got there," she whispered, her eyes darting to Clara. Poirot recalled the floral perfume in the suite, jasmine with a sharp edge. A bottle of rare French perfume, Fleur de Minuit, was found in Clara's room during a discreet search, but Clara insisted it was a gift, never worn that evening. The scent, however, matched the suite's lingering aroma. Poirot's mustache twitched. "A perfume is a signature," he said softly. "But whose?" The clues, though plentiful, were a tangle of truths and lies. Poirot returned to the lounge where the suspects' unease had grown palpable. He questioned them again, probing for cracks in their stories. Lady Eleanor admitted hearing a muffled thud from Sir Reginald's suite around 11:40 p.m., but claimed it was nothing unusual. Victor accused Clara of eavesdropping near Sir Reginald's door, a charge she denied with a flash of anger. Grayson revealed he'd prescribed Sir Reginald a mild sedative weeks ago, but not chloral hydrate. Blake muttered about a traitor's debt, his eyes fixed on the floor. Beatrice, near tears, said she'd seen a shadow in the corridor but couldn't be sure who it was. Poirot's mind sifted through the evidence. The amaryllis petal suggested Beatrice's involvement, yet the perfume pointed to Clara. The cigarette butt implicated Victor, the gauze Grayson, the metal Blake. The handkerchief was too obvious, the thud too vague. "A web of lies," Poirot murmured, pacing before the fireplace. "But the truth, it is a single thread." Japp, exasperated, said, "You're seeing patterns where I see chaos, Poirot." Poirot's smile was serene. "Chaos, mon ami, is merely order waiting to be understood." A new discovery deepened the mystery. A hotel ledger found in Sir Reginald's office showed he'd recently changed his will, naming an unknown beneficiary. "This changes everything," Japp said, flipping through the pages. The will, locked in a safe, was inaccessible without a solicitor, but its existence suggested a motive beyond the suspect's stated grievances. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Money, betrayal, secrets, these are the colors of murder, but the canvas is not yet complete. He revisited the suite, testing the window's bolts again. They were rusted, immovable, yet a faint scratch on the frame caught his eye, a mark so subtle it could be overlooked. "Curieux," he said, running a gloved finger over it. The locked door with its key inside remained the central enigma. A master key existed, Perkins admitted, but it was kept in a locked office. Poirot's gray cells churned. Had the killer used a clever trick, or was the locked room a deliberate illusion? As dawn approached, the lounge grew heavy with fatigue and fear. Poirot addressed the suspects, his voice slow and deliberate, designed to unsettle. "Each clue is a note in a symphony," he said. "But some notes are false. Who among you plays the melody of guilt?" Lady Eleanor's lips tightened. Victor's watch clicked shut. Clara's shawl fell. Grayson's journal trembled. Blake's cane thumped, and Beatrice's handkerchief tore further. The room was a pressure cooker, and Poirot was turning up the heat. Chapter 5. Complications and Twists. 2,000 words. The Silverleaf Hotel, its grandeur now cloaked in the gray light of dawn, seemed to pulse with unspoken accusations. It was nearing 5 a.m., and the grand lounge where Hercule Poirot and Inspector Japp had gathered the suspects was heavy with the weight of suspicion. The gaslights flickered, casting shadows that danced across the faces of Lady Eleanor Whitmore, Mr. Victor Langston, Miss Clara Duval, Dr. Arthur Grayson, Major Henry Blake, and Mrs. Beatrice Langley. Each sat rigid, their earlier composure fraying like worn silk. Poirot, his emerald green dressing gown immaculate despite the hour, paced slowly. his ebony cane tapping a rhythm that matched the ticking of his little gray cells. "Mesdames et messieurs," he said, his voice a soothing balm in the tense air. "The truth is like a tapestry, woven tightly, yet a single pull can unravel it, and unravel it I shall." Jap, his overcoat rumpled from a sleepless night, rubbed his eyes. "This case is a maze, Poirot," he grumbled. "Clues pointing everywhere and nowhere, petals perfume that blasted letter. And the locked room, it's driving me up the wall." Poirot's mustache twitched, his green eyes gleaming with the thrill of the puzzle. "A maze, mon ami, has an exit. We need only find the path. The clues so far, the ruby-hilted dagger, the sedative-laced brandy, the cryptic letter, 'You will pay for your betrayal,' the amaryllis petal, the faint scratch on the window frame, formed a constellation, but its shape eluded him. New complications, however, were about to sharpen the stakes. The first twist came with a crash. As Poirot questioned Clara about her presence near Sir Reginald's suite, a deafening thud echoed from the ballroom above. The suspects froze, and Jap's hand went to his whistle. Poirot, his cane raised, led the charge upstairs, followed by Jap and a constable. In the ballroom, a massive crystal chandelier lay shattered on the floor, its prisms scattered like broken stars. Beneath it, miraculously unharmed, stood Clara Duval, her silk shawl torn, her face pale with shock. It fell," she gasped, pointing to the ceiling where the chandelier's mount hung precariously. Jap's eyes narrowed. "That's no accident," he muttered, examining the frayed rope. Poirot's gray cells sparked. A second murder attempt aimed at Clara? Or a staged distraction to muddy the waters? Clara, trembling, insisted she'd come to the ballroom to clear her head, unable to sleep. "I heard a creak, and then it crashed." Her story was plausible, but Poirot noted her hesitation, as if she were guarding a deeper truth. The other suspects, summoned to the scene, reacted with a mix of horror and suspicion. Lady Eleanor's lips curled. "Convenient, Miss Duval, that you escaped unscathed," Victor snorted. "Someone's tying up loose ends." Grayson adjusted his spectacles, silent but watchful. Blake's cane thumped, and Beatrice's handkerchief shredded further in her hands. Poirot's gaze lingered on the rope, its clean cut suggesting sabotage. "This," he said softly, "is no coincidence." Back in the lounge, tensions flared. Clara accused Victor of blackmailing Sir Reginald over their failed shipping deal, claiming she'd overheard him threatening Sir Reginald at dinner. "You said he'd regret crossing you," she cried. Victor's face reddened. "Lies! I was angry, sure, but I didn't kill him or rig that chandelier." Lady Eleanor, seizing the moment, revealed Beatrice's gambling debts, her voice dripping with disdain. "Mrs. Langley owed thousands, didn't she? Desperate enough to kill, perhaps." Beatrice, near tears, admitted her debts, but swore she'd never harm her brother-in-law. "He was family," she protested, her voice breaking. Major Blake, his medals glinting, confessed to a darker motive. "Reginald profited from the war while my men died," he said, his voice raw. "He supplied shoddy equipment, tents that leaked, boots that tore. I confronted him years ago and he laughed." His fists clenched, and Poirot noted the raw pain in his eyes. Dr. Grayson, pressed by Poirot, admitted prescribing Sir Reginald a mild sedative weeks ago, but insisted the chloral hydrate in the brandy wasn't his. "Someone tampered with my medical bag," he said, his tone defensive. Poirot's eyes flicked to Grayson's journal, its pages still dog-eared on toxicology. A new clue surfaced in the hotel's service wing. A second letter found in a waste bin near the kitchen. Written in the same jagged script as the first, it read, "Your secrets will bury you." Jap cursed. "Another forgery?" Poirot examined it, noting its similarity to the suite's letter but a slight tremor in the pen strokes. "This is no accident," he said. "The killer wishes to confuse us." The letter deepened the mystery of Sir Reginald's betrayal, hinting at an affair or a hidden scandal. Beatrice's gasp at the letter's discovery drew Poirot's attention, but she claimed ignorance, her eyes avoiding his. The amaryllis petal found in the suite took on new significance when Poirot learned Beatrice maintained a private greenhouse in her London home, stocked with rare flowers. "A hobby," she said weakly when questioned. "I brought no petals here." Yet the petal's freshness suggested otherwise. The perfume Fleur de Minuit traced to Clara's room was sold in only one London shop, but Clara insisted she hadn't worn it that night. Poirot's nose, however, detected a faint trace on Beatrice's handkerchief, complicating the trail. The chandelier incident prompted Poirot to re-examine the locked room. In Sir Reginald's suite, he focused on the window's faint scratch, now suspecting a rigged bolt. Testing the mechanism, he found the bolts could be loosened with a thin wire, pulled through a tiny gap in the frame, then retightened from outside, a clever trick to create the illusion of a sealed room. "Mon Dieu," he murmured. "The killer is ingenious." Japp, skeptical, demanded a demonstration, but Poirot demurred. "The proof, mon ami, comes with the motive." A bellboy, Tommy, provided another twist, reporting a thud in the suite at 11:40 p.m., minutes before the scream. This contradicted Clara's claim of passing by at 11:30 p.m. and Beatrice's alibi of being in her room. Tommy also mentioned seeing a shadow in the corridor, like a woman's silhouette, but couldn't identify it. Poirot's gray cells churned. Was the shadow the killer or another red herring? As accusations flew, the suspects turned on each other. Victor accused Grayson of tampering with the brandy, citing his toxicology expertise. Grayson retorted that Victor's cigarette butt was suspicious. Blake suggested Clara's acting skills made her a master of deception, while Clara hinted at Eleanor's ruthless ambition. Beatrice's silence seemed to shrink under their glares. Poirot, observing, noted every glance, every tremor. "The killer," he said, his voice slow and deliberate, "weaves a web of misdirection. But the web will break." The hotel ledger revealing Sir Reginald's changed will took on new weight when Japp's constable reported the beneficiary was not among the suspects, an outsider named E. Sinclair. Who was this mystery figure, and why had Sir Reginald favored them? The will, still locked in a safe, remained a tantalizing enigma. Poirot's mind raced, connecting the ledger, the letters, and the chandelier. Was the killer protecting a secret tied to the will, or eliminating threats? As the sun rose over Mayfair, casting a pale glow through the lounge's windows, Poirot addressed the suspects. "The truth is near," he said, his cane pointing like a conductor's baton. "But danger grows. One among you has killed, and another may yet strike." The chandelier's crash echoed in their minds, a warning of the killer's reach. Lady Eleanor's necklace glinted, Victor's watch ticked, Clara's shawl slipped, Grayson's journal trembled, Blake's cane thumped, and Beatrice's handkerchief was a tattered ruin. The Silverleaf Hotel, once a haven, was now a battlefield of wits. Chapter 6. The Revelation, 2,000 words. The grand ballroom of the Silverleaf Hotel, its mirrored walls reflecting the pale morning light of October 1925, was an improbable stage for justice. Yet it was here, amidst the polished parquet and gilded cornices, that Hercule Poirot gathered the suspects at 7 a.m., their faces etched with exhaustion and dread. Lady Eleanor Whitmore sat with regal poise, her emerald necklace a cold beacon. Mr. Victor Langston slouched, his gold watch idle. Miss Clara Duval clutched her torn silk shawl. Dr. Arthur Grayson gripped his medical journal, his spectacles fogged. Major Henry Blake leaned on his cane, his medals glinting, and Mrs. Beatrice Langley, her lavender gown crumpled, twisted a tattered handkerchief. Inspector Japp stood by the door, his notepad worn from furious scribbling, his eyes fixed on Poirot. The air was thick with anticipation, the silence broken only by the distant chime of a Mayfair church bell. Poirot stepped forward, his emerald green dressing gown pristine, his ebony cane a silent partner in his performance. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his Belgian accent a melody of precision, "a crime most foul has been committed. Sir Reginald Hawthorne stabbed in a locked room, betrayed by one, or perhaps two, among you. But the truth it cannot hide from Hercule Poirot." His green eyes swept the room, lingering on each suspect, their reactions a canvas of guilt and fear. "Let us reconstruct this tragedy step by step and reveal the killer." He began with the crime. Sir Reginald, drugged with chloral hydrate in his brandy, stabbed with a ruby-hilted dagger in his fifth-floor suite, the door locked from within, the window bolted, no secret passages. The clues: a crumpled letter, "You will pay for your betrayal," an amaryllis petal, a faint floral perfume, a scratched window frame, a second letter, a fallen chandelier, had woven a web of misdirection. "Each clue," Poirot said, "is a thread. Some are true, some are false, but together they form a pattern." He addressed the locked room first, the heart of the puzzle. "The door, locked with the key inside, the window bolted. How did the killer enter and exit?" He paused, letting the question hang. "The answer lies in the window." He described the faint scratch on the frame, a clue overlooked by all but his meticulous eye. The bolts, he revealed, had been loosened earlier that day, held in place by a thin wire threaded through a tiny gap in the frame. The killer entered, committed the murder, then exited via the window, pulling the wire to retighten the bolts from outside, creating the illusion of a sealed room. "A simple mechanism," Poirot said, "but ingenious. The scratch betrays the wire's path." Japp's jaw dropped. "Blimey, Poirot, that's clever." Next, the dagger. "The ruby hilt," Poirot said, "matches a set in the hotel's display case, accessible to all guests." It was no heirloom, no personal weapon, but a deliberate choice to obscure the killer's identity. The sedative in the brandy, chloral hydrate, was traced to Dr. Grayson's medical bag, but Poirot held up a hand before Grayson could protest. "Patience, doctor. Your roll comes soon." The amaryllis petal found beneath the rug was a pivotal clue. "This flower," Poirot said, holding up the vibrant red petal, "is rare, grown in a private greenhouse. Only one among you has such a passion, Mrs. Beatrice Langley." Beatrice gasped, her handkerchief falling. "I didn't bring it here," she cried. Poirot's eyes softened, but his voice was firm. "We shall see, madame." The perfume, Fleur de Minuit, pointed to Clara Duval, whose bottle was found in her room. But Poirot revealed a twist. The scent was also on Beatrice's handkerchief, a detail confirmed by his keen nose. "The perfume was stolen from Mademoiselle Duval," he said, "and used to mislead us." Clara's eyes widened, but she remained silent, her shawl trembling. The letters, "You will pay for your betrayal and your secrets will bury you," were forgeries, their jagged script a deliberate disguise. "The tremor in the second letter," Poirot said, "betrays a hand under pressure, a hand that wrote in haste." He glanced at Beatrice, whose fingers twitched. The chandelier, a near-fatal twist, was no accident. "The rope was cut," Poirot said, "to silence Mademoiselle Duval, who knew too much. Or so the killer feared." Clara's pale face confirmed her fear, but not her guilt. The hotel ledger naming an unknown beneficiary, E. Sinclair, suggested a hidden motive, but Poirot dismissed it as secondary. "The will," he said, "is a distraction. The true motive is closer to home." Poirot turned to the suspect's motives, his voice rising with theatrical flair. "Lady Eleanor, Your pride was wounded by Sir Reginald's refusal to fund your estate. Monsieur Langston, your shipping deal collapsed, costing you a fortune. Mademoiselle Duval, your career hung by a thread when Sir Reginald withdrew his patronage. Major Blake, your wartime betrayal by Sir Reginald fueled a deep grudge. Dr. Grayson, your professional warnings were ignored, perhaps with cause. And Madame Langley, your gambling debts and exclusion from the will drove you to desperation. Each suspect shifted, their eyes darting, but Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. He paused, then pointed his cane at Beatrice. Madame Langley, it is you who killed Sir Reginald. A collective gasp filled the room. Beatrice's face drained of color, her voice a whisper. No. It can't be, Poirot continued, his tone measured but relentless. You stole the dagger from the display case, drugged Sir Reginald's brandy with chloral hydrate, and entered his suite via the window, using the wire trick to lock it behind you. The amaryllis petal fell from your gown, a careless mistake. The perfume taken from Mademoiselle Duval's room was a clever misdirection. The letters forged in your hand cast suspicion on others. Your motive? Sir Reginald's new will, cutting you out, left you penniless, your debts a noose around your neck. Beatrice shook her head, tears streaming. I couldn't... But Poirot was not finished. He turned to Dr. Grayson, whose spectacles slipped. And you, Doctor, were her accomplice. The room erupted in murmurs. You supplied the chloral hydrate knowing its purpose. Your journal, marked at toxicology, betrays your expertise. You resented Sir Reginald's dismissal of your medical advice, and Madame Langley promised you a share of her regained fortune. Grayson's journal fell, his face ashen. You can't prove that, he stammered. Poirot smiled. The proof, it is in the details. The sedative's precise dose, the petal's freshness, the wire's scratch, all point to a plan, meticulous yet flawed. Madame Langley, your nervous hands betrayed you from the start. Dr. Grayson, your journal was your confession. He described how Beatrice slipped into the suite at 11:40 p.m. as Tommy's thud confirmed, drugged Sir Reginald and stabbed him, exiting via the window. Grayson provided the sedative, expecting a payoff. The chandelier was Beatrice's attempt to silence Clara, who had seen her near the suite, mistaking her for a shadow. Beatrice broke, sobbing. He was going to ruin me. My debts. I had no choice. Grayson, cornered, admitted supplying the sedative, claiming coercion. She threatened to expose me, he said. Japp, shaking his head, signaled his constables. That's enough for me, Poirot. Cuff 'em. Beatrice and Grayson were led away, their fates sealed. Poirot addressed the remaining suspects, his voice softening. The heart, it is a complex thing, driven by greed, fear, pride. But justice, it is simple. It demands the truth. The ballroom fell silent, the weight of the revelation settling like dust. Clara's shawl slipped, Victor's watch ticked, Eleanor's necklace gleamed, and Blake's cane rested. The Silverleaf Hotel, its secrets exposed, stood as a monument to human folly. Chapter 7. Justice Served, 2,000 words. The Silverleaf Hotel, bathed in the soft golden light of a late October morning in 1925, seemed to exhale as the weight of its secrets lifted. The grand ballroom, where Hercule Poirot had unmasked the killer only hours ago, now stood quiet, its mirrored walls reflecting a scene of subdued resolution. The suspects, Lady Eleanor Whitmore, Mr. Victor Langston, Miss Clara Duval, and Major Henry Blake, remained in the lounge, their faces a mixture of relief, shock, and lingering unease. Mrs. Beatrice Langley and Dr. Arthur Grayson, the guilty pair, had been led away by Inspector Japp's constables, their footsteps echoing down the marble corridor like the final notes of a tragic symphony. Poirot, his emerald green dressing gown still impeccable, stood by a tall window sipping a tisane of chamomile and mint, his green eyes fixed on the misty streets of Mayfair. His ebony cane rested against a rosewood table, a silent witness to the drama's end. Jap, his overcoat now slung over his arm, joined Poirot, his face weary but satisfied. "You've done it again, Poirot," he said, his voice gruff with admiration. "A locked room, a dagger, and a room full of liars. Yet you sniffed out the truth like a bloodhound." Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile softening his features. "Non, mon ami," he said, his Belgian accent a soothing cadence. "It is not the nose, but the little gray cells. They see what the heart hides." The lounge, its velvet drapes and flickering gaslights now bathed in daylight, felt almost serene, as if the hotel itself were recovering from the night's horrors. Poirot turned to the remaining guests, who sat in a semicircle of plush armchairs, their earlier tension replaced by a fragile calm. Lady Eleanor, her emerald necklace catching the light, met his gaze with grudging respect. Victor Langston, his gold watch ticking once more, leaned back, his brash demeanor subdued. Clara Duval, her silk shawl draped loosely, dabbed at her eyes, still shaken by the chandelier's near-fatal fall. Major Blake, his medals polished but his face drawn, gripped his cane tightly. "You have questions, I presume," Poirot said, his voice warm yet commanding. "Ask, and I shall clarify the tapestry of this crime." Clara spoke first, her voice trembling. "Why me? Why the chandelier?" Poirot nodded, his eyes kind. "Mademoiselle Duval, you were a threat. You saw Madame Langley near Sir Reginald's suite, though you mistook her for a shadow. The chandelier was her desperate attempt to silence you, a reckless act to protect her secret." Clara shivered, her shawl slipping further. I thought it was an accident," she whispered. Poirot shook his head. "Non, mademoiselle. The rope was cut, a calculated move." Victor, his American drawl sharp, interjected. "And that cigarette butt? You thought it was mine, didn't you?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Oui, monsieur, but it was a red herring planted by Madame Langley to cast suspicion. Your brand, Chesterfield, was convenient, as you smoked openly at dinner." Victor snorted, but his relief was palpable. Lady Eleanor, her voice crisp, asked, "What of the letters? That nonsense about betrayal?" Poirot turned to her, his cane tapping lightly. "The letters, madame, were forgeries, written by Madame Langley to mislead. You will pay for your betrayal," a dramatic flourish to suggest a scandal, perhaps an affair, when the true motive was financial ruin. The second letter, found in the kitchen, bore a tremor. Her hand shook under the pressure of her guilt. Major Blake, his voice gruff, leaned forward. "And the medal? You found mine in the billiards room." Poirot nodded. "Another misdirection, Major. Madame Langley, knowing your wartime grudge, stole your medal to implicate you. It was a clumsy attempt, but effective in sowing doubt." Blake's jaw tightened, but he said no more. Poirot then recounted Beatrice's confession elicited in a private room before her arrest. "Madame Langley," he said, "was driven by desperation. Her gambling debts, amassed in secret, totaled thousands. Sir Reginald, discovering her extravagance, revised his will to exclude her, leaving her penniless. She saw no way out but murder." Beatrice, trembling under Jap's questioning, had admitted stealing the ruby-hilted dagger from the hotel's display case, a weapon chosen for its anonymity. She drugged Sir Reginald's brandy with chloral hydrate, obtained from Dr. Grayson, and entered his suite via the window, using a wire to rig the bolts, a trick she'd learned from a groundskeeper at her estate. The amaryllis petal, Poirot added, fell from her gown, a careless trace of her greenhouse hobby. The perfume Fleur de Minuit stolen from Mademoiselle Duval was a deliberate plant to shift blame. Dr. Grayson's role, Poirot explained, was crucial. The doctor, resentful of Sir Reginald's dismissal of his medical advice, was coerced by Madame Langley, who threatened to expose a past indiscretion, a falsified prescription that cost a patient dearly. In exchange for his silence and the chloral hydrate, she promised him a share of her regained fortune. Grayson, cornered, had confessed his complicity, his voice breaking as he described his regret. "I thought it was just a sedative," he said, "not murder." Poirot's eyes softened. "The heart, doctor, is easily swayed by fear." The hotel ledger, naming E. Sinclair as the new beneficiary, was a final red herring. Japp's inquiries revealed Sinclair as a distant cousin, unaware of the will's change. "A distraction," Poirot said, "irrelevant to the crime." The chandelier cut by Beatrice to silence Clara was her final misstep, its rope betraying her access to the ballroom's maintenance loft. As Poirot spoke, the suspects absorbed the truth, their motives, pride, greed, betrayal, laid bare but innocent of murder. Lady Eleanor's financial disputes, Victor's failed deal, Clara's career woes, and Blake's wartime grudge were real, but none had crossed into killing. "Each of you," Poirot said, "carried a shadow of guilt, but only two cast the fatal blow." Japp, securing Beatrice and Grayson in a police van outside, returned to the lounge, his notepad finally closed. "You've tied it up neatly, Poirot," he said. "The commissioner'll want a word about that window trick." Poirot inclined his head. "The little gray cells, they do not disappoint." He turned to the window where the morning mist was lifting, revealing Mayfair's elegant streets. "The Silverleaf," he mused, "is a mirror of the human soul. Beautiful, yet flawed." The remaining guests dispersed, their steps heavy with the weight of the night. Clara, her career now secure with Sir Reginald's death, murmured thanks to Poirot. Victor, his bravado tempered, offered a curt nod. Lady Eleanor, her pride intact, swept out, her necklace glinting. Blake, his cane steady, saluted Poirot with a soldier's respect. The hotel staff, led by Mr. Perkins, began restoring order, polishing the parquet and resetting the ballroom, as if to erase the tragedy. Poirot retired to his suite, his tisane now cold but his mind warm with satisfaction. He stood before the mirror, adjusting his bow tie, reflecting on the case. "The heart," he said softly, "is as intricate as the mind. Greed, fear, desperation. They drive us to darkness, but the truth, it brings light." He thought of Beatrice, her lavender gown a symbol of her faded hopes, and Grayson, his journal a testament to his compromise. The locked room, once an enigma, was now a solved puzzle, its simplicity a testament to human ingenuity and folly. As he packed his small valise, preparing to leave the Silverleaf, Poirot glanced at the hotel's facade through his window. Its marble gleamed, its secrets buried. "Justice," he murmured, "is not vengeance. It is order restored." He tipped his hat to the porter, Tommy, who had provided the crucial thud at 11:40 p.m., and stepped into the crisp London air, his cane clicking on the cobblestones. The Silverleaf Hotel, once a stage for murder, resumed its quiet elegance, but Poirot knew its walls would whisper of this night for years to come. Chapter 8. Echoes of the Truth, 2,000 words. The Silverleaf Hotel, its marble facade glowing under the pale sunlight of a late October afternoon in 1925, stood as a silent witness to the drama that had unfolded within its walls. The grand lobby, with its rosewood inlaid parquet and crystal chandeliers, bustled once more with the comings and goings of guests, as if eager to reclaim its air of sophistication. Yet a subtle undercurrent of unease lingered, a whisper of the night when Sir Reginald Hawthorne's life was snuffed out in a locked room, his blood staining a Persian rug. Hercule Poirot, His emerald green suit as pristine as ever stood near the grand staircase, his ebony cane resting lightly in his gloved hand. His green eyes, sharp as ever, surveyed the scene, his little gray cells reflecting on the human tapestry he had unraveled. It was the day after the revelation, and Poirot had lingered at the Silverleaf partly to tie up loose ends, partly to observe the aftermath of justice. Inspector Japp, his overcoat now neatly pressed, joined him in the lounge, where a fire crackled in the hearth, casting warmth on the velvet drapes. "Well, Poirot," Japp said, his voice lighter than it had been in days, "you've given Scotland Yard another tale to tell. Beatrice Langley and Dr. Grayson are in custody, and the commissioner's singing your praises." Poirot's moustache twitched, a modest smile curving his lips. "The praise, mon ami, belongs to the truth. I am but its humble servant." The remaining guests, Lady Eleanor Whitmore, Mr. Victor Langston, Miss Clara Duval, and Major Henry Blake, had gathered in the lounge, their presence requested by Poirot for a final conversation. Each bore the marks of the ordeal. Eleanor's regal posture was softened by fatigue, Victor's brash confidence tempered, Clara's eyes red-rimmed but resolute, and Blake's military bearing weighed by reflection. The absence of Beatrice and Grayson was palpable, a void where suspicion had once thrived. Poirot addressed them, his voice warm yet precise, a storyteller concluding his tale. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, "the crime is solved, the guilty apprehended. But the truth, it leaves echoes, ripples that touch us all. Let us reflect and perhaps understand." He gestured to a tray of tisanes and tea, a nod to civility, and the group settled into armchairs, their guarded expressions giving way to curiosity. Lady Eleanor spoke first, her emerald necklace glinting as she leaned forward. "Mr. Poirot, your mind is extraordinary, but I must ask, how did you know it wasn't me? My disputes with Reginald were no secret." Poirot nodded, his cane tapping lightly. "Madame, your pride is fierce, but it is not the pride of a killer. Your financial quarrels with Sir Reginald were open, not hidden. The guilty, they conceal their motives in shadows." Eleanor's lips curved, a rare acknowledgement of respect. "You see too much, Mr. Poirot," she said, her voice softer than usual. Victor Langston, his gold watch ticking in his hand, chuckled ruefully. "I thought you had me pegged with that cigarette butt. Planted, you say?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Oui, monsieur. Madame Langley chose your Chesterfields to divert suspicion, knowing your habit. But your anger, it is loud, not cunning. The killer required subtlety." Victor shook his head, his bravado returning. "Guess I'm lucky I'm not subtle, then." Clara Duval, her silk shawl draped loosely, wiped a tear. "I could have died, Mr. Poirot. That chandelier." Her voice broke and Poirot's gaze softened. "Mademoiselle, you were a danger to Madame Langley because you saw her shadow near the suite. The chandelier was her desperate act, but your survival was her undoing." Clara nodded, her auburn curls catching the firelight. "I'll never forget your help. My career? It's safe now, thanks to you." Poirot inclined his head, accepting her gratitude with grace. Major Blake, his medals polished but his eyes weary, spoke gruffly. "My medal in the billiards room." "Another trick?" Poirot confirmed. "Oui, Major. Stolen to cast doubt, exploiting your grudge against Sir Reginald's wartime profits." "But, Your Honor, it is not that of a murderer." Blake's cane steadied and he saluted Poirot, a soldier's gesture of respect. "You've a sharp eye, sir. I misjudged you." Poirot then turned to a final loose end, the mysterious E. Sinclair named in Sir Reginald's revised will. Japp, who had telephoned the solicitor that morning, shared the findings. "Sinclair's a cousin, lives in Cornwall, didn't even know about the will," Japp said. "Seems Reginald wanted to fund a charity through her." Nothing to do with the murder. Poirot nodded. A red herring, mon ami, as I suspected. The true motive was Madame Langley's desperation, fueled by her debts and exclusion from the will. The group fell silent, absorbing the finality of the case. Poirot recounted Beatrice's confession, delivered in a stark police cell. Her gambling debts, spiraling beyond control, had driven her to despair. Sir Reginald's decision to cut her from his will, citing her recklessness, was the final blow. I couldn't face ruin, she had sobbed, detailing how she stole the ruby-hilted dagger from the hotel's display case, a weapon chosen for its anonymity. She obtained chloral hydrate from Dr. Grayson, leveraging his past indiscretion, a falsified prescription that had harmed a patient. The window's rigged bolts, a trick learned from her estate's groundskeeper, allowed her to enter and exit, leaving the room sealed. The amaryllis petal, a slip from her greenhouse, betrayed her presence. The stolen fleur de minuit perfume planted to frame Clara was her attempt at misdirection, as were the forged letters. Dr. Grayson's complicity, Poirot explained, stemmed from coercion and resentment. He provided the sedative, knowing its purpose, hoping for a share of Madame Langley's regained wealth, Poirot said. His journal, marked at chloral hydrate, was his silent confession. Grayson's admission, wrung out under Japp's questioning, confirmed his role, though he claimed Beatrice's threat forced his hand. I was trapped, he had said, his spectacles fogged with shame. Poirot addressed the chandelier, a final act of desperation. Madame Langley, fearing Mademoiselle Duval's suspicions, cut the rope in the ballroom's loft, hoping to silence her. But the truth, it is relentless. The scratch on the window frame, the petal's freshness, the perfume's trace, all had converged to expose the guilty. The hotel staff, led by Mr. Perkins, moved quietly in the background, polishing brass and resetting tables as if to erase the stain of murder. Poirot observed their diligence, a testament to the Silverleaf's resilience. The hotel, he said, is like the human spirit. It endures despite the shadows. He sipped his tisane, its chamomile warmth grounding his thoughts. The suspects, now cleared, prepared to leave, their lives altered by the ordeal. Clara planned to return to the stage, her patron's death freeing her career. Victor, his deal lost but his freedom intact, spoke of new ventures. Eleanor, her pride unshaken, vowed to rebuild her estate. Blake, his grudge laid to rest, sought peace in retirement. Poirot's reflections turned philosophical as he stood by the lounge's window, Mayfair's streets bustling below. The heart, he murmured, is a labyrinth of desire, greed, fear, pride. Yet it is the mind, the order of thought, that finds the way. He thought of Beatrice, her lavender gown a faded dream, and Grayson, his journal, a record of compromise. The locked room, once a puzzle, was now a lesson in human frailty. As he prepared to depart, Poirot tipped his hat to Perkins, who thanked him profusely. You've saved the Silverleaf's reputation, sir, Perkins said. Poirot smiled. Non, monsieur. I have only restored its truth. He stepped into the crisp London air, his cane clicking on the cobblestones, the hotel's marble facade gleaming behind him. The Silverleaf would endure, its secrets now part of its legend, a tale whispered in its halls for years to come. Chapter 9. Shadows of Motives, 2,000 words. The Silverleaf Hotel, its marble facade softened by the twilight glow of an October evening in 1925, stood as a monument to both elegance and human frailty. The grand lobby, with its rosewood inlaid parquet and crystal chandeliers, hummed with the quiet rhythm of recovery, as staff polished brass and guests resumed their routines. Yet the air carried a faint trace of the drama that had unfolded. Sir Reginald Hawthorne's murder, solved by Hercule Poirot's little gray cells in a locked-room mystery that had gripped the hotel like a vice. Poirot, his emerald green suit as impeccable as ever, lingered in the lounge, his ebony cane resting against a velvet upholstered chair. His green eyes, sharp as polished jade, observed the comings and goings, his mind sifting through the final threads of the case. It was the evening after the arrests of Mrs. Beatrice Langley and Dr. Arthur Grayson, the guilty pair whose motives, desperation and coercion, had led to a ruby-hilted dagger and a rigged window bolt. Poirot had chosen to remain at the Silverleaf for one more day, drawn by a need to understand the human currents that had swirled around the crime. Inspector Japp, his overcoat slung over his shoulder, joined him, sipping a cup of strong tea. "You're still here, Poirot?" Japp said, his voice tinged with amusement. "Case closed, isn't it? Or are those gray cells of yours chasing ghosts?" Poirot's mustache twitched, a smile playing at his lips. "Not ghosts, mon ami, but shadows. The shadows of motives that linger in the innocent." The remaining suspects, Lady Eleanor Whitmore, Mr. Victor Langston, Miss Clara Duval, and Major Henry Blake, had agreed to meet Poirot in the lounge, a final gathering to reflect on the ordeal. Each carried the weight of their own story, their motives scrutinized and cleared, yet forever altered by the Silverleaf's tragedy. Poirot, his tisane of chamomile and mint steaming gently, addressed them with his characteristic warmth. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his Belgian accent a soothing melody. "The crime is solved, justice served. But the heart, it does not forget. Let us explore the shadows of your motives and perhaps find clarity in their light." Lady Eleanor Whitmore, her emerald necklace catching the firelight, sat with the poise of a queen, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of vulnerability. Poirot turned to her first, his cane tapping lightly. "Madame, your dispute with Sir Reginald was one of pride and finance. Tell me, how did this shadow shape you?" Eleanor's lips tightened, then softened. "Reginald was a fool," she said, her voice crisp but tinged with regret. "He refused to invest in my late husband's estate, called it a relic. I fought him not for greed, but for legacy." She paused, her fingers brushing her necklace. "This ordeal, it's shown me pride can blind as much as it drives. I'll rebuild, but differently, without bitterness." Poirot nodded, noting the shift in her demeanor, a softening of her sharp edges. Mr. Victor Langston, his gold watch ticking in his hand, leaned back with a wry grin. "Guess I'm up, huh?" he said, his American drawl cutting through the room's quiet. "That shipping deal with Reginald, it was my shot at the big time, tying my family's name to something grand. When he pulled out, I lost more than money. I lost respect." He shook his head, the cigarette butt planted to frame him still stinging. "You cleared me, Poirot, and I'm grateful. I'm heading back to New York, starting fresh. No more chasing dreams that turn to dust." Poirot's eyes gleamed, recognizing Victor's brashness as a mask for ambition now tempered by humility. Miss Clara Duval, her silk shawl draped loosely, spoke softly, her auburn curls framing a face marked by resilience. "Mr. Poirot, I owe you my life," she said, her voice trembling. "That chandelier. I thought it was the end." She recounted her backstory, a Parisian actress who fled scandal to London, relying on Sir Reginald's patronage to rebuild her career. "When he withdrew his support, I was terrified I'd lose everything again. I wasn't guilty, but I felt trapped." The near miss with the chandelier had shaken her, but Poirot's revelation of Beatrice's guilt freed her. "I'm returning to the stage," she said, a spark in her eyes. "Not for fame, but for me." Poirot inclined his head, admiring her courage to reclaim her path. Major Henry Blake, his medals polished but his limp pronounced, leaned heavily on his cane. "My grudge with Reginald went back to the war," he said, his voice gruff. He profited while my men died in shoddy tents wearing boots that fell apart. I hated him for it. The stolen metal planted to frame him had reopened old wounds. "You saw through it, Poirot," he said, his eyes meeting the detective's. "This case made me face that anger. I can't change the past, but I can honor my men by living better." Blake's salute was steady, a soldier's acknowledgement of a battle won, not on the field, but within. Poirot listened, his gray cells weaving their stories into the larger tapestry of the case. Each suspect's motive, pride, ambition, fear, betrayal, had been a shadow, magnified by suspicion but dispelled by truth. He turned to a final clue that had lingered: the faint floral perfume, fleur de minuit, detected on Beatrice's handkerchief. A discreet inquiry with the hotel's maid revealed that Beatrice had borrowed Clara's perfume bottle days before the murder, a detail she'd concealed. "A small act," Poirot said, "but it sealed her fate. The perfume was her signature, misapplied to deceive." Japp, stirring his tea, raised an eyebrow. "You've tied up every loose end, Poirot, even that Sinclair fellow in the will." Poirot nodded, confirming that E. Sinclair, the distant cousin, was a charitable beneficiary, irrelevant to the crime. "The will was a distraction," he said, "but Madame Langley's fear of it was her undoing." He recounted Beatrice's confession again for clarity. Her gambling debts, the rigged window bolt learned from her groundskeeper, the stolen dagger, the planted perfume, and the forged letters, all driven by desperation to avoid financial ruin. Dr. Grayson's complicity, coerced by blackmail, completed the plot, his toxicology expertise supplying the chloral hydrate. The lounge grew quiet, the fire's crackle a soft counterpoint to their reflections. Poirot stood, his cane a steady anchor. "The shadows of motives," he said, "are not always dark. They teach us. Pride can become purpose, ambition can find balance, fear can yield courage, betrayal can lead to honor." The suspects nodded, their faces softened by introspection. Eleanor vowed to fund her estate through new alliances. Victor planned a modest business venture. Clara embraced her stage return, and Blake sought a veteran's charity. The hotel staff, led by Mr. Perkins, moved with renewed purpose, polishing the parquet and resetting the ballroom as if to banish the memory of the chandelier's crash. Poirot observed their diligence, a mirror of the human spirit's resilience. "The Silverleaf," he mused, "is more than stone and glass. It is a stage for redemption." He sipped his tisane, its minty warmth grounding his thoughts. As the suspects prepared to depart, Poirot offered a final word. "The truth, it does not erase pain, but it lights the way forward." Eleanor's necklace glinted with resolve. Victor's watch ticked with purpose, Clara's shawl draped with confidence, and Blake's cane stood firm. The Silverleaf Hotel, its elegance restored, would carry their stories, a quiet testament to justice. Poirot, his valise packed, stepped toward the lobby, pausing to tip his hat to Perkins. "You have a fine establishment, monsieur," he said. "Guard its heart well." Perkins, flustered, bowed deeply. Poirot's cane clicked on the cobblestones as he exited, the London twilight casting long shadows. The Silverleaf secrets were laid bare, its echoes now stories of growth and renewal. Chapter 10. Poirot's Departure, 2,000 words. The Silverleaf Hotel, its marble facade catching the soft glow of a late October morning in 1925, stood as a testament to resilience, its elegance undimmed by the tragedy that had unfolded within its walls. The grand lobby, with its rosewood inlaid parquet and crystal chandeliers, buzzed with renewed life, porters carrying luggage, guests murmuring over morning tea, and the faint strains of a piano drifting from the lounge. Yet the memory of Sir Reginald, Hawthorne's murder solved by Hercule Poirot's meticulous intellect, lingered like a faint perfume, a reminder of the human frailties exposed in a locked-room mystery. Poirot, his emerald green suit as pristine as ever, stood at the foot of the grand staircase, his ebony cane in hand, his green eyes reflecting the scene with a mix of satisfaction and melancholy. His valise, packed with geometric precision, rested at his side, signaling his imminent departure. It was the morning after the suspect's reflections, and Poirot had spent the night in his fourth-floor suite, penning a letter to his friend Captain Hastings, who was away in Argentina. The letter, written in Poirot's elegant script, detailed the case. The ruby-hilted dagger, the rigged window bolt, the amaryllis petal, the stolen fleur de minuit perfume, and the forged letters, all orchestrated by Mrs. Beatrice Langley with Dr. Arthur Grayson as her coerced accomplice. Mon cher Hastings, Poirot wrote, the heart is a puzzle as complex as the mind driven by desperation and fear, yet it is order, the clarity of truth that prevails. He sealed the letter, his thoughts turning to the hotel and its guests, whose lives had been irrevocably changed. Inspector Japp joined Poirot in the lobby, his overcoat neatly buttoned, a rare smile softening his ruddy face. "Off already, Poirot?" he said, clapping a hand on the detective's shoulder. "You've left the Silverleaf in better shape than you found it, I'll give you that." Poirot's mustache twitched, his smile modest but warm. "Non, mon ami," he replied, his Belgian accent a soothing melody. "I have merely restored its harmony. The Silverleaf it endures, as do we all." Japp chuckled, his notepad tucked away, the case officially closed. "The commissioner's still talking about that window trick," he said. "A wire through the frame. Blimey, that's one for the books." Poirot's gaze swept the lobby where the remaining suspects, Lady Eleanor Whitmore, Mr. Victor Langston, Miss Clara Duval, and Major Henry Blake, prepared to depart, their bags packed, their futures reshaped. He had requested a final moment with them, not to probe further, but to observe the ripples of justice. They gathered in the lounge, its velvet drapes framing a view of Mayfair's bustling streets, the fire crackling softly in the hearth. Poirot, his tisane of chamomile and mint steaming, addressed them with his characteristic grace. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, "the Silverleaf has been a stage for tragedy, but also for renewal. Before I depart, let us reflect on what we leave behind." Lady Eleanor, her emerald necklace glinting with resolve, spoke first. "Mr. Poirot, your clarity has humbled me," she said, her voice softer than its usual sharpness. "I came here to fight for my estate, but I leave with a clearer purpose. To build, not just preserve." She had secured a meeting with a new investor, her pride now channeled into action. Poirot nodded, noting the spark in her eyes, a sign of growth beyond her former bitterness. Victor Langston, his gold watch ticking steadily, offered a wry grin. "You saved my hide, Poirot," he said, his American drawl tinged with gratitude. "That cigarette butt had me sweating, but it's made me rethink things. I'm done chasing pipe dreams." He planned to return to New York, focusing on a modest business venture with his family's support. Poirot's eyes gleamed, recognizing Victor's shift from reckless ambition to grounded resolve. Clara Duval, her silk shawl draped with newfound confidence, smiled through red-rimmed eyes. "You gave me back my life, Mr. Poirot," she said, her voice steady. "That chandelier, it was a wake-up call. I'm returning to the stage not for applause, but for myself." Her Parisian past, once a shadow, now fueled her determination. Poirot inclined his head, admiring her courage to embrace her art anew. Major Henry Blake, his medals polished but his limp eased by rest, leaned on his cane with a soldier's dignity. "You saw through my anger, Poirot," he said, his voice gruff but warm. "Reginald's betrayal cut deep, but your truth showed me I can honor my men without hate." He planned to fund a veterans' charity, a legacy for those lost in the war. Poirot's smile was gentle, acknowledging Blake's journey from grudge to purpose. The hotel staff, led by Mr. Perkins, moved with quiet efficiency, polishing brass and resetting tables, their efforts a silent vow to restore the Silverleaf's reputation. Perkins approached Poirot, his pinched face softened by gratitude. "Mr. Poirot, you've given us a second chance," he said, bowing slightly. "The Silverleaf will thrive again thanks to you." Poirot waved a hand, modest as ever. "Non, monsieur. The Silverleaf thrives because of its heart, its people." A final thread of the case emerged as Poirot reviewed his notes. The faint scratch on the window frame, the key to the locked room solution, had puzzled him until a groundskeeper's manual, found in Beatrice's London home, confirmed her knowledge of the wire and bolt trick. A simple mechanism, Poirot mused, learned from a gardener's ingenuity turned to murder. The amaryllis petal, traced to her greenhouse, and the stolen perfume borrowed from Clara's room were final proofs of her guilt. Dr. Grayson's journal, marked at chloral hydrate, sealed his complicity, driven by Beatrice's blackmail over his past indiscretion. Poirot's reflections deepened as he stood by the lounge's window, Mayfair's streets alive with the clatter of horse-drawn cabs and the hum of motor cars. "The human heart," he said softly, "is a canvas of desire, greed, fear, pride, betrayal. Yet it is the mind, the pursuit of order, that paints the truth." He thought of Beatrice, her lavender gown a symbol of faded dreams, and Grayson, his journal a record of compromise. The locked room, once an enigma, was now a lesson in the fragility of human choices. The suspects, their futures brighter, offered farewells. Eleanor's handshake was firm, Victor's nod respectful, Clara's embrace warm, and Blake's salute crisp. Poirot, his valise in hand, stepped into the lobby where the chandelier's restoration was underway, its prisms gleaming anew. He paused, his eyes tracing the rosewood patterns of the floor, a mirror of the order he cherished. "The Silverleaf," he murmured, "is a microcosm of life, beautiful, flawed, enduring." As he prepared to leave, Poirot penned a final note in his pocketbook. "Justice is not the end, but a beginning, a chance to rebuild." He tipped his hat to Perkins, who stood at the door, and stepped onto the cobblestones of Mayfair, the autumn air crisp against his face. His cane clicked rhythmically, a metronome for his thoughts. The Silverleaf Hotel, its secrets laid bare, would carry on, its halls whispering of a murder solved and lives transformed. Poirot, ever the observer of humanity, walked toward his next adventure, his little gray cells already humming with anticipation.